Hello everyone, today we're going to be doing Against Presuppositionalism, or the Intellectual Crimes of the Dyerites. First, a quick outline. We're going to be covering the transcendentals, underdetermination, and nonsense. This will be in the scholastics and in Dyer. Then we're going to be covering the damning conjunction, the two propositions that Dyer accepts regularly, which will destroy his entire worldview. Okay, part 1, transcendentals, underdetermination, and nonsense. So first, the transcendentals in the scholastics. So in the scholastics, they have these things called the categories. These are laid out in Aristotle's Categories book, same name. The categories will be things like substance, relation, time, place, action, passion, etc. Now, the transcendentals were things which were above the categories. The transcendentals were the things which were common to every category. These would be being, one, true, good, and thing, at least in Aquinas and most of the other scholastics. Eventually, Scotus would add his own set of transcendentals. There are those that are convertible with being, so that's the ones I just mentioned, one, true, good, and thing. But there's also the disjunctive transcendentals, which would be like act and potency. Act and potency apply to every category, but they also aren't coextensive. Not everything that exists is in act, and not everything that exists is in potency. But everything is either in act or potency. And then finally, there's the pure perfections. These are the things which are common both to God and to humans. Because God isn't in the categories, anything which is in God and in creation is going to be a transcendental. So an example of this would be having a will and an intellect. Okay, next we have the transcendentals in Dyer and maybe Kant. Dyer talks about Kant's understanding of the transcendentals a lot. I don't know enough about Kant to comment. But we do have the transcendentals in Dyer. So the way Dyer talks about the transcendentals, he says that the transcendentals are the things which make experience possible. So you have these experiences, and to account for the possibility of these experiences, a whole host of transcendentals have to be in place that make it possible for you to have experiences. The transcendentals on this view are something more like the categories than they are like the transcendentals of Aquinas, Scotus, or the other scholastics. Next, we have presuppositions. Presuppositions are things that you assume are true and you don't argue for. The presuppositions on Dyer's view are the things that you need to ground the transcendentals. So you have the transcendentals, you have immediate access to them, and then you also have your presuppositions. These are the things which let you account for or make sense of the transcendentals. And then a worldview is just all of the presuppositions a person has at the same time, all together. Okay, next we have Jay Dyer's general strategy. His strategy is something like this. The only worldview capable of accounting for experience in the transcendentals is the Orthodox Christian worldview. Whatever is capable of accounting for the transcendentals is true, therefore the Orthodox Christian worldview is true. You'll get variations on this in a lot of his arguments or debates he has online. He'll argue from logic, from universals, from the possibility of knowledge. Now, the first thing we want to look at here is just this phrase, only the Orthodox Christian worldview can coherently account for the transcendentals. This is just obviously false, because you could do so just by saying they're brute. Everything about every transcendental is brute. If this is my only presupposition, and I hold to this, that's going to be totally coherent. It accounts for the transcendentals just fine. It's not the Orthodox Christian worldview, and it's a whole worldview. It's a complete set of presuppositions. Anything that you could possibly introduce to say that we should use something other than the proposition, everything about the transcendentals is brute, is going to rest on another presupposition that you've made. But there's no reason for me to make that presupposition as well. I just stopped with everything about the transcendentals is brute. After that, what move is there to make? There's no other presuppositions to appeal to, and they've already accounted for everything in the transcendentals. Okay, Next, we have two magic words. The magic words are coherent and arbitrary. These are words that don't really mean anything. They have vague gesturings to maybe some kind of contradiction. Maybe they're vague gesturing to ad hocness being a problem, like making an explanation that's ad hoc. Either of these things is fine, but if you don't assume that you aren't supposed to use ad hoc explanations, if you don't assume that the law of non-contradiction is true, and you don't assume that ad hocness is bad, then they're entirely useless. Next, we have drawing back the curtain. So what's happening here is something called underdetermination. So take any piece of evidence, maybe the sentence, "the chair is in the room." Think about a chair. The chair is in the room. We know this, but maybe the chair is red in the room, or the chair is a throne that happens to be in the corner of the room, or the chair is an ancient chair being held up in the middle of the room by a ghost. All of these are possible. All we know is that there's a chair in the room. The theory is underdetermined by the evidence. Now, how do we break underdetermination? How do we find out which one of these things is true? Well, there are broadly two solutions that are given. One is by looking at the different theories and determining their theoretical virtues, which fall into four broad categories of evidential, coherential, aesthetic, and diachronic. Or we look at the novel testable predictions that it's possible to make using the different theories. Now, the reason this is relevant is because what Dyer is doing implicitly is saying we've got this set of evidence, which is the transcendentals, and we have to make theories which make sense of our evidence. And he's appealing to specific kinds of theoretical virtues which he won't admit. You can use theoretical virtues, but he's just vaguely gesturing at the idea of a theoretical virtue and saying that all of the people which have a different worldview violate this vague mega virtue, which is arbitrariness or coherence. Okay, now for the next part, which is the